What is up, everybody? This is Adam. Welcome back to Fouled Out. Matt is going to be joining me in just a moment to talk about week 8 of the NFL season and start looking forward to week 9. But before we get there, I wanted to talk baseball a little bit at the top here. I've been way more invested in this World Series than I thought I would be. Like watching it instead of hockey and basketball, like I've been really interested in the World Series. And I was thinking about why, as a Red Sox fan, I would be so interested in a Yankees versus Dodgers World Series that is on the verge of being over, as the Dodgers have a 3-1 lead going into tonight's game 5. And I think I'm really invested in it because I hate this Yankees team. I was listening to a podcast today where they were talking to a Yankees fan about how much New York fans like or dislike this team, or on a scale from 1 to 10, how much do you love this team? As the first Yankees team to, as the first Yankees team to make the World Series in a long time, I think 15 years, something like that. Tell you, as a Red Sox fan, I hate this team, and a lot of things about this team are kind of bringing back that old-fashioned Red Sox Yankees hate that I have. And maybe I'm feeling nostalgic because it's the 20-year anniversary of the 2004 ALCS, where the Red Sox did complete an 0-3 comeback. But I look at this Yankees team and I'm like, man, they have everything that I've always hated about the Yankees. They have the players who won't shut up. Like Jazz Chisholm has become a great Yankees villain to me, where he really hasn't played that well in the playoffs. But God, he has something to say after every single game. Whether it's them being down like 1-0 or 2-0, him being like, yeah, we still got this in the bag. And then when they win one game, he's like, yeah, we really feel like if any team can do this, it's us. And I'm like, dude, you've been here since the trade deadline. You haven't even been in New York for a full season. And I'm super annoyed every time I open up Reddit or the Score app and see Jazz Chisholm has now said something else. They have all the overpaid superstars like Stanton and Judge, who, like, Judge is an awesome regular season player, but is basically the James Harden of baseball and can't do shit in the postseason and is getting carried all the way to the World Series by his teammates right now. It's the fans being awful. You saw those two fans with the fan interference on Mookie Betts where they're grabbing at his wrist and trying to like pull his glove and all that. And those guys are obviously douchebags. It's like one of the worst, most blatant fan interferences we've ever seen. And the Yankees, of course, in typical Yankee fashion, this are not going to ban those guys. They're like, oh yeah, they can come back for game 5, no problem. The MLB had to step in and say, no, those guys are banned for game 5. And like, honestly, it should have been a lifetime ban from all venues for the two of them. But for the MLB to have to step in and say those guys aren't allowed back for the next game, and for the Yankees to not do it themselves, it's just like, oh, so typical Yankees as a Red Sox fan watching them. So it's kind of bringing back that nostalgia for me of like why I hate this team so much, even though the Red Sox Yankees rivalry has not been as relevant in recent years as it once was. And if they re-sign Juan Soto to like a $500 or $600 million deal this offseason, that's just going to be the icing on the cake to me of like, yeah, they go out there, they're the New York Bankies again. They're spending money left and right and still can't get it done. And then you have the Red Sox, who are not spending money, which is pissing me off, but they have this awesome core of 4 hitters down in the minors who are going to be coming up over the next couple of years. So we're going to have like this awesome young team that's hopefully going to be like the scrappy underdog that we used to love for the Boston Red Sox before we started paying out the nose for players too. But I could see this in the next couple of years being like, oh yeah, the Yankees, the evil empire is back, especially if they do find a way to come back and win this World Series, which, God, I hope they don't. But there's that fear like in my stomach as a Red Sox fan that's like, oh man, what if they do this? Like, what if they win game 5 tonight and do force this back to LA? Now all of a sudden all the pressure's on LA. Like I'm watching the game last night, game 4, and I was frantically like, why are they doing this bullpen game? I hate this strategy. And I understand they're trying to save some of their better arms for later in the series, but I'm like, you have your foot on their throats. Push it down now. Do not do this stupid bullpen game where you throw out all your worst guys and give up a grand slam to Volpe and end up losing like 11-4. And then they're like, oh, yeah, we'll be fine. We're just going to pitch our good guys later. And now you've given the Yankees players, fans, and organization hope in this series. Although, like, fingers crossed, it's going to be snuffed out tonight. But if they did find a way to win this World Series, and then they re-sign Juan Soto to a massive deal and have the biggest payroll in baseball again, and then the Red Sox are like this, hey, we're not spending a ton of money. We're bringing up all these young guys who are awesome, and we're scrapping and putting together this like team that's going to compete with the Yankees. Like, we'd be right back in the heart of the rivalry to me, because that's kind of how we viewed it before 2004, was like the Red Sox are the scrappy underdog, even though our payroll was the second biggest in all of baseball. Don't tell early 2000s Red Sox fans that, but that's where we want to be, is like the scrappy underdog. New York is the evil empire. We're the only ones who can take them down. Like, I'm ready for that to come back, because I think baseball is better when that rivalry is really relevant. And I think the last time it was super relevant, we played them in a wild card game a couple of years ago, but in 2018, when the Red Sox had their record breaking season, best season in franchise history, when they went on to win the World Series against the Dodgers, Aaron Boone and Brian Cashman came out and said, yeah, well, we feel like we're really the only team in the league that can do damage against this team. And then they end up playing in the ALDS, and the Red Sox win that 3-1. And you have, the Yankees win game 2, and they're playing New York in the visiting locker room at Fenway. And then the Red Sox come and beat them in New York. And that was a fun series. And I think baseball is just more fun when both these teams are good and they see each other in the playoffs. So I hope that we have that coming down the road, especially as a Red Sox fan who just desperately wants my team to be relevant again, because being 500 or lower every season just sucks. I'm super excited to see these guys come up and challenge the Yankees again. But that said, go Dodgers. Please do not let a 3-0 comeback happen. I think there's a certain sense of pride as a Red Sox fan in being the only team that's ever come back from 3-0 and having it be against the New York Yankees, and how magical 2004 was. Like, I would encourage everybody to go watch that documentary that just came out on Netflix and relive that, because it is one of the most magical moments in sports history, especially if you're a Boston fan, just with the history of the Red Sox and the Yankees up to that point, what had just happened in 2003, and then everything that happens in that series where it's like Mariano Rivera's blowing saves. Big Papi is really truly becomes Big Papi and becomes a Yankee killer. Like, I'll probably do a whole podcast about that once the NFL season is over or something, because man, it's super fun to relive that and rewatch that. But if the Yankees now also come back from being down 3-0 on the 20-year anniversary of us coming back 3-0 against them, I'll be pissed. I will be pissed, not only that the Yankees won a World Series, but that we would not the only team to have done it, and have the only team to ever have it happen against them be the Yankees. Right? You guys are with me. Even if you're not Red Sox fans, I know you all hate the Yankees. I really doubt there's a lot of New York fans that listen to this podcast. Come on, you're probably all Detroit and Boston fans, and we all hate the Yankees, something we can all agree on. But those are my World Series thoughts. Aside from that, I think Freddie Freeman is kind of approaching Big Papi territory with the fact he has 4 homers and 9 RBIs through 4 games. We'll see if he can homer again tonight. But the one thing that does make me a little nervous for the Dodgers is if Freddie Freeman cools off in any way, that offense could actually be in trouble. And I just telling you, man, as a Red Sox fan, I got this little pit in my stomach after the Yankees won game 4. That's like, oh God, what if they do it? What if they do it? And I know it's not likely, but that's the Boston fan DNA in me telling me that it could happen, and it would be the Yankees to do it. So let's hope not. Go Dodgers, go Mookie, go Freddie. Please put them away tonight so I don't have to deal with this shit anymore. But for now, let's go grab Matt. Let's talk week 8 of the NFL season. Let's go. All right, Matt is here, fresh off week 8 of the NFL season. Matt, how you doing, buddy?
Better than the Yankees.
Yeah, I was just talking about them in the opening, and I know they're down 3-1, but as a Red Sox fan, I have this pit in my stomach that's like, oh, what if they do it? What if they do come back? Like, Not great. Uh,
No.
well, we're not here to talk about the Yankees. I already spent enough time talking about the Yankees, and if there are any Yankees fans that actually listen to this podcast, they're probably really sick of hearing my thoughts on it as a Red Sox fan.
Their fans have already incurred enough negative karma for them. There's no way they're coming out of them this series.
Who who do you think the least likely fan bases to listen to this podcast are? New York is 100% one of them.
Yeah.
I would say Dallas, maybe like Cowboys fans.
LA.
Yeah, I don't know. We give the Rams some love.
A little bit, but I also feel like the NFL teams are like one of the least followed franchises in LA, I feel
Yeah,
like.
I feel like it's not LA sports fans. I feel like it's LeBron
Yeah.
fans because like there's a difference between
Hmm.
Lakers fans and like LeBron fans. So it's probably LeBron fans.
Yeah.
I was like, because I was thinking about that because I was like, it's probably not Miami fans because as much as I hate the Dolphins, we really appreciate the Heat on this podcast and Jimmy Butler
Yeah.
and Bam Adebayo. So yeah, I would say it's New York, it's Dallas, it's LeBron fans, probably like Packers fans, like Green Bay fans.
Yeah.
That would make sense. So
Chicago fans.
yeah. Anyway, that's not who the target. If you're a fan of one of those teams, you're probably not the target audience for this podcast. But so we're gonna talk some week 8. I made a list of 6 things that I think we can say are over after 8 weeks of football. But first, there is more news as we start the podcast with every week now. It seems that wide receivers just get traded every single week. So this week, it is Dionte Johnson getting traded from the Carolina Mad Cats to the Baltimore Ravens. I continue not to understand player value because I like Dionte Johnson's been pretty good for them for the Panthers this year.
Hmm.
And they trade him in a 6th-round pick to the Ravens for a 5th-round pick. So it's like a pick swap. You're probably moving up like 10 spots in the draft at most. And the Panthers are eating the majority of Dionte Johnson's contract. It's not that I don't understand they traded him. I just thought you could get more for him. So it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know if
Well,
I don't
the
understand player value or I just don't
the
understand the fan
expiring
base.
contract doesn't really help with his value either. I feel like that's pretty low even for that. But yeah, I mean like we see time and time again that like none of us outside of the NFL circle have any idea what player value is.
No, because it's like Matt Judon gets traded for a 3rd, and I'm like, that seems like a lot. And then it's like Calais Campbell gets traded for a 6th. I'm like, that seems low, but I don't understand it. My only thought on it really is like for the Ravens, it's kind of like the rich getting richer situation.
Hmm.
They're already number 1 in offensive DVOA by a wide margin. They're at 36%. Buffalo is number 2 at 20.2%. So they're very good offensively already, but the trade doesn't really address what the Ravens' problem is.
Hmm.
They are 32nd in pass yards allowed right now.
Yeah.
And we just saw that burn them on Sunday against the Cleveland Browns. Oh, Lord. The Yankees just went up 3-0 in the bottom of the first. I, I don't like this, Matt. I don't like how this feels. The other news from this week, Texans wide receiver Stefon Diggs tears his ACL.
Yep.
Very bad for the Texans offense that is already down Nico Collins, although he should be coming back soon. Very good for my bold prediction that Stefon Diggs would finish outside of the top 48 receivers in fantasy, especially because 8 weeks into the season, he is wide receiver 10 in half point PPR. So I honestly don't know if 38 guys are going to be able to pass him the second half of this season. Like he's been so good so far that
Yeah.
he's still, I think there's a chance he doesn't finish outside the top 48 wide receivers. Although with half of the season left, half the fantasy season left, I would think that we would get there, but I guess we'll see.
It'll probably be pretty close.
It's at least going to give me a chance. Where before I had literally zero chance because he's been good for them, which kind of like before he got hurt, it kind of begged the question, like, why did you obliterate the last couple of years of this guy's contract as soon as he walked in the door? Like, because he's been pretty big for them this season, and Stroud is still on a rookie deal for a while longer.
Yeah.
But now it kind of is like, okay, well, it makes a little bit more sense now because maybe you can get him back cheaper now that he's torn his ACL, or maybe he comes back on a 1 year prove it deal
Hmm.
with the ACL recovering. So we will see. Get well soon, Stefon Diggs, but please finish outside of the top 48 fantasy wide receivers. All right. I have made a list of 6 things that I think that we can say are over after 8 weeks of football. Matt has not seen this list, so he will be reacting blindly. And I want to get your opinion on whether you think we can actually say these things are over or not. Thing number one that is definitely over: the San Francisco 49ers domination of the NFC West.
Yes.
Yeah, so the 49ers have won the NFC West the last 2 years. And they entered this year as the prohibitive favorite to do it again. And I think the favorite to win the NFC. They were either first or second, right up there with the Lions.
Hmm.
We have played 8 games, and the division is now at a virtual deadlock. The Cards, Sea Chickens, and 49ers are all 4-4 after 8 weeks, and the Rams are 3-4. But honestly, with Puka and Cup back,
Hmm.
they look like a completely different team and probably the best team in this division right now. The Sea Chickens cannot put 2 good games together back to back.
Nope.
The Cards, they have like a negative 27 point differential and yet are still tied for first in this stupid division because they beat Miami 28-27. The 49ers have, I think, very clearly become the year from hell team, which probably should have been obvious when their first round pick got shot right before the season started.
Yeah.
And now, 8 weeks into the season, he seems to be their healthiest receiver after recovering from the gunshot wound.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying they can't win the division this year, but I think them being the prohibitive favorite and all of us being like, oh, yeah, 49ers going to win the division. I think that is
Yeah.
definitely over.
The idea that you're gonna get CMC back at some point and he's gonna look like himself, like that idea has got to be gone completely out the window.
So they opened the practice window for him. So what is it? He has to practice in the next 4 weeks or else he can't play this season.
Um, they have 21 days to activate him.
So it seems like they're going to be activating him soon because there's no other reason to really do that.
Yeah.
But even if he does come back, he hasn't played all season and he has Achilles tendonitis. He has swollen Achilles in both ankles.
Yeah.
So it's not great. I mean, they're missing Ayuk. Debo's missed time. Kittle's missed time. Juwan Jennings has missed time. Like, it's been bad. But the bigger problem for the 49ers offense this season, and this is probably a function of Christian McCaffrey being out, but if you look at Brock Purdy's average depth of target, it's gone way up. And they've really
Hmm.
changed from an offense that relies on yards after the catch and getting guys open in space to an offense that's trying to throw down the field and attack vertically. And they're just not that offense. You know,
Hmm.
you had vertical shots the last couple of years, but they're created because you're doing all of the
Yeah.
shorter stuff that's creating yards after the catch and it's sucking people up. And then all of a sudden, Ayuk can hit them deep. But
Yeah.
if you're throwing deep as often as they are this season, it's not going to work out well for you. So
Yeah.
we'll see when CMC comes back. I think like even if he comes back and comes back with a bang right away, I don't know if it's going to last the whole season with that injury he has.
Yeah. I struggle to see him be able to go out there week after week and look like the dominant threat on offense that he's known to be.
Thing two, I think is over is that there are, and I cheated because this is actually three things. I am calling the division race for three divisions. I think we have three divisions that are done after 8 weeks. The AFC East, where the Buffalo Bills have a 4-game lead on the entire division. They have a 4-game lead after
Yeah.
8 games. The NFC South, where the Falcons are only up by 1, but they've already beat the Bucks twice. So really they're up by 2 games. And now the Buccaneers don't have Chris Godwin or Mike Evans. And that didn't look amazing on Sunday without the two of them. And the last one is the AFC South, where the Texans are up 2 games on the Colts and have already beaten the Colts twice. So really it's like a 3-game lead 8 weeks into the season.
Yeah, I think those things are pretty wrapped up. I honestly was a little surprised that Anthony Richardson started this past week, given the situation that they were in.
Oh,
Um,
Anthony Richardson is
oh,
actually next on this list. But yeah, the if I was gonna say one of those divisions is not over, it would probably be the NFC South. One, because it's a virtual 2-game lead. It's the Falcons are up by 1 game in the standings and they have the tiebreaker over the Buccaneers. But it's the Falcons. And every time I'm excited about the Falcons on this podcast, they fuck me. And they play the Cowboys. Um, yeah, they play the Cowboys in Atlanta this weekend, and they're favored by 2.5. And I'm like, as much as I would love to pick the Falcons by 2.5 this week, I am very nervous because it's the Falcons.
that is usually how anyone should feel when they're picking the Falcons.
Yeah, it's not great. Thing three, the aforementioned Anthony Richardson. And it's funny because I actually made this list before the news that they were switching to Joe Flacco as a starting quarterback.
Hmm.
Anthony Richardson's time, Anthony Richardson's time as a starting quarterback in the NFL is over.
I think it's a bit early on that. I mean, how many chances did Sam Darnold get because of his potential? Sam Darnold wishes he had the talent that Anthony Richardson has. Uh, I mean, even in that game where he completed like 30% of his passes this last week, he still had three throws in that game that like maybe three other guys in the NFL can even think of trying. They were all dimes.
I just don't see how the Colts could go back to him this season now unless Flacco gets hurt,
Yeah.
or if they're like horrible with Flacco and it's like, okay, put him back in
Yeah.
kind of thing. But I say his time is and to be honest, like I
Yeah.
think he will obviously get more chances. Like they just
Yeah.
spent a top 5 pick on him.
Yeah.
He's whether it's later this year or next year,
Mhm.
like he will be the starting quarterback of
Yeah.
the Colts again.
But this year, I think that's a reasonable thing to say. Um,
Well, the thing
barring injury, but going forward for his career, yeah, I think it's jumping the gun.
the big thing that's jumping out right now is that he's only completing 44.4% of his passes.
Hmm.
In the last 20 years, among all qualified quarterbacks, 44.4% is the worst completion percentage ever.
Yeah.
It is lower than 2011 Tim Tebow was at 46.5%. 2009 Jamarcus Russell was at 48.8%. And 2005 JP Lossman was at 49.6%. Like This is literally the worst completion percentage we have ever seen. And we talked about this a little bit on
Hmm.
text, but like I think the big problem right now is that the Colts are afraid to run Anthony
Hmm.
Richardson because he gets hurt like every game that he runs.
Yeah.
And when you take that out of his arsenal, like he's just not a special guy as a pocket passer. Like I know he's got the rocket launcher arm and he has a special
Yeah.
arm, but the thing that made him so special coming out in the draft was like, oh my God, look at the athleticism and
Well,
combine those two things.
it's like you take a basketball player who's like his go-to is like slashing, getting to the rim, like a physical downhill player, but he can shoot, right? Like he's dangerous from the outside. And then you just try to make them a spot up shooter. Well, they're not going to hit their shots because they're not doing the thing that gets them in the rhythm.
Yeah, it's like if they took John Morant and they were like, hey, you're going to be a catch and shoot 3-point shooter now. And not like, or Anthony Edwards. And they're like, you know,
Yeah.
don't attack the basket anymore because we're worried you're going to get hurt attacking the
Yeah.
basket. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, literally the thing that
Hmm.
makes them a special player, you're taking it away.
I think it remains to be seen, like, is Shane Steichen actually a good head coach? Because right now, there's not really evidence to say yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the thing about it that's so concerning to me too is like, okay, so if you're only going to complete 44.4% of your passes and you're not going to run,
Yep.
you're completely useless on the field.
Yeah.
And then on Sunday, he subbed himself out because he was tired.
Yeah.
And that has not sat well with anybody. So, like the Colts organization, the fans, the media, like pretty much he's getting universally panned for
Yeah.
subbing
I
himself
mean,
out.
I have more to say on this later, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So,
the short on it for him is you can't do that. I'm gonna guess that he probably didn't think about it that way. Uh,
yeah,
and
it just,
like, but it's like it's a universally bad look.
yeah, I agree with that. So, like, to me right now, it's part performance and part attitude with him. And that
Hmm.
is really when you get into the territory of like, okay, can this guy actually be a starter in the league? Like, does he have
Yeah,
all the talent to do it? Yes. But
yeah,
can he stay healthy? And can he run the ball and stay healthy? And then what is his attitude like? And like,
yeah.
they switched to Flacco this week, which I think makes sense. But
Hmm.
then Anthony Richardson is immediately in the media saying, oh, well, they didn't explain to me why they're switching to Flacco. Like, okay, I get that the coach probably should have had a conversation with you, but do you need it to be explained to you,
Yeah.
Anthony
Oh,
Richardson? Like why
I'm.
they're switching?
We'll get into this more. It no,
Okay.
the situation is gets worse.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't want to step on it too much. So I'll go
Yeah.
to thing four that is definitely over. And I think that this is the most over thing on my list. Good fantasy football content. It's over. They don't make it anymore.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this because the last couple of weeks I've been seeing videos on like Instagram and TikTok talking about how James Cook was a buy low candidate. And then this week, so he had a huge game. He put up 27 this week against the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. And these same people are like, oh, I told you should have bought low on James Cook when I told you to because I was right. Look at me, blah, blah, blah. As someone who owns James Cook in multiple fantasy leagues and prioritized drafting him in the third round, at what point was he ever a sell low candidate? Like, not only would I have never sold him low this season, I wouldn't have sold him at all. There is like
Yeah.
literally almost no player that you could offer me that I would have sold him for. His game log is 12 points, 28 points, 16.7, 5.3 in that awful Baltimore game,
Yeah.
17. He misses a game with an injury, 9.2 and 27. He is RB7 on the year while missing a game and having that horrific Baltimore game. I don't. At what point was he a buy low? Like anybody who either the Baltimore game or the game he missed with an injury, anybody who like freaked out and sold James Cook is a goddamn moron. You're playing in a league with a taco.
My thoughts on most sports media is pretty low. It's a pretty low bar, and fantasy sports media is probably even more low quality.
I think one of the problems is that social media gives a platform to amateurs who are
Mhm.
not smart. And you text me about something else today that someone said on Reddit, and you said the line, what did you say? People don't understand how words work.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think people know what a buy low candidate is. So I want to spell it out for you. A buy low candidate is someone that you don't have to spend a lot on to obtain. So, like in a trade, you don't have to trade a lot to get them. And they potentially have some upside, but it's basically like, okay, it's low risk and there could be reward. So, a real buy low candidate right now after 8 weeks would be someone like Travis Etienne. He is RB40 this season after
Hmm.
being RB3 last season. He's been hurt when he's played. He's been bad. He's been inefficient. The other running back on his team, Tank Bigsby, has more fantasy points than he does and might be the starter going forward. But he is someone you could realistically obtain cheaply
Hmm.
because the person who drafted him is probably like, oh my God, I can't believe I drafted this guy. He's horrible. He's seemingly not in a good situation, but he has the talent to potentially pop the second half of the season.
Yeah.
So like that is someone where you could trade like a wide receiver to for him or something, depending on what the other team has. Jonathan Brooks is a good buy low candidate, the rookie running back for Carolina. He hasn't played this year, and the current running back in Carolina, Chuba Hubbard, is RB14 on the
Yeah.
season. He's been awesome, but they spent a high draft pick on Jonathan Brooks.
Hmm.
He's practicing. He practiced today. He was limited in practice today, and obviously he's in a situation where if he could take over that lead role, then he can obviously put up points because Hubbard is RB14 and is nowhere near as talented as Jonathan Brooks is. So like
Yeah.
those are buy low candidates. Not James Cook. James Cook was never a buy low candidate. I would not have sold you James Cook for any other player. Like I don't think you could tell you. I don't think you can name a player that I would have traded you James Cook for, except for like maybe Derrick Henry with how awesome
Yeah.
he's been this season, like that type of guy. But people on social media were like, if you have Terry McLaurin, trade him for James Cook. And I have McLaurin, and McLaurin's been great. I would not trade James Cook for him.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the guys that you're talking about trading him for like you said, Henry, Justin Jefferson, like the cream of the crop.
Yeah, and
So
like even then, I don't know because like I said, he's RB7 on the season, and he's missed a game and had a horrible game,
yeah.
and he's had multiple 25 plus point performances. So yeah, it's like you'd have to trade me something absolutely massive for me to consider trading him. That is not a buy low. Stupid. Thing five that is over. Deshaun Watson's career. Think it's over. We talked last week about the fact that he tore his Achilles, and I hope that this is the last time we talk about him this season because I feel like we've talked about him for the last 4 weeks, and I'm kind of sick of him. But he tears his Achilles. Jameis Winston started on Sunday for the Browns, which is what we've been asking for all year. He goes
Yep.
27 of 41, 334 yards and 3 touchdowns in a 29-24 win over the Ravens. Watson's season high for passing yards was 196. Jameis threw 334, and Watson only had one game this season where he threw more than one passing touchdown, and that was a game where he threw two passing touchdowns, and that was when they still had Amari Cooper.
Yep.
So it seemed, I mean, it's been one game, and we'll kind of see how it goes. But combining this with the fact that like Flacco came in and was absolutely awesome in this offense last year when Deshaun Watson got hurt. And now it looks like the same thing might be happening with Jameis Winston. It's like literally the only person who's not awesome in this offense is Deshaun Watson. And next year he's going to be 30 years old coming off a torn Achilles.
Yep. Uh, I mean, this is probably one of those situations where they're just stuck eating his contract because like it's going to be a tough sell getting him back there out on the field. Like you have to justify that to your fans, and there's just simply isn't after what you saw in just one game from Jameis Winston.
Yeah, this was my whole thing with Joe Flacco is that they purposely did not bring him back because people would have been calling for Flacco to start.
Yeah.
And I think, the casual fans might be dumber than we are, but uh, they tried to sell it to their fans and say, like, oh, well, we couldn't bring him back. And yeah, he was good in the offense, but the offensive coordinator's gone. It's a new offense. And we brought in like a backup for Watson. Watson's the right guy. But if it happens again this season where like Winston comes in and is continuously awesome in this offense, then there's nothing you can say next season because literally whoever the backup quarterback is, everybody's going to be like, you need to start that guy,
Yeah.
whether it's Winston or it's someone else. But
I don't care if Jameis Winston plays Deshaun Watson level football the rest of the year. He has still shown more than Deshaun Watson showed at any point this year. So, like, there's just simply isn't signs of capacity from Deshaun Watson at
yeah,
this point.
everybody's like, oh my God, he did it against the Ravens. I'm like, yeah, well, the Ravens are the worst pass defense in the entire league.
Yeah.
And if Kyle Hamilton catches that interception on the last drive, right
Hmm.
before he throws the game winner to Charles Tillman, Charles Tillman? His name's not Charles
No.
Tillman. Cedric Tillman. It is Cedric Tillman. It was, but I just looked at it and it's like C Tillman, and I was like, it is Charles Tillman. He's back. Peanut punching his way into the end zone. Cedric Tillman throws the game winner to Cedric Tillman. If Kyle Hamilton makes that catch, we're probably having a different conversation. But the Browns are 2-6 now, and they have Nick Chubb back.
Hmm.
Seemingly have a competent quarterback. Matt, the odds for the Browns to make the playoffs right now are plus 1,800. It's possible I might have sprinkled just a little bit on the Browns to make the playoffs. Little sprinkle.
That is totally worth a $5 bet.
It's I mean, it's like bet $5 to win over $100,
Yeah.
right? So it's just worth like a little sprinkle, little look-see loo because
Salt Bay.
yeah, little salt bay. It's worth a little sprinkle just because like it could just be one of those like, oh, everybody's so happy that Deshaun Watson's not out there anymore that they just start playing good football. And I think that 7 seed in the AFC is kind of wide open right now.
Hmm.
So like the AFC playoff picture, you have the Chiefs, the Texans, the Steelers, and the Bills as the division leaders. Baltimore is 5-3. Denver is 5-3, and they're wild card 1 right now, and Baltimore is actually wild card 2. And Denver has a plus 53 point differential, which is better than Baltimore or the Chiefs or the Texans. Fucking Denver, man. But the Chargers are 4-3, and they're in that 7 seed spot. So you got like the Chargers, the Colts, and the Bengals are the only teams that are really ahead of them. And they play the Chargers this week, and then I think they still have 2 games. No, they still have 1 game against the Bengals. They do play the Broncos. So like, I mean, if they get a little hot, I think 9-8 still might be able to take that last AFC wild card spot. So you go 7-2 down the stretch. Just worth a little sprinkle or a little salt bay, like Matt said. Last thing that is definitely over, and that is the NFL caring about concussions. This one probably has been over for a while, but
I don't think it ever started.
that's probably true. At least the public perception of, I'm not even going to say the NFL. I'm just going to say all of us caring about concussions. I don't think that like people care about concussions anymore. It was such a big thing. And now it's not because Tua Tagovailoa just played an entire game this week where he threw 38 passes. And when he was asked if he was going to wear the Guardian cap during games, he said, potato. And no, I'm kidding. He said no. uh, I thought you would think that was funnier. So when he was asked if he was going to wear the Guardian cap for games, he said no, which if somehow you don't know, the Guardian cap is the little hat you put on over your helmet that's supposed to help prevent concussions. Like the number one guy that this thing was built for is like, no, I'm good. Nobody felt the need to do anything about Tua playing in this game. Like, and there was no conversation about it. There was no nothing. It was just like, yeah, we almost watched this guy die on national television like 4 weeks ago. Okay, he's out there, and I feel like it's just we've just accepted it now. We've accepted it and we've moved on. And it's just like, yeah, this is a dangerous game. These guys are putting their health at risk to play it. Let's watch and see what happens.
Yeah, I think especially with Tua, like at this point, I just think there's a lot of fatigue around that subject. It's like we've had this conversation too many times around him, and it's like, all right, you're coming back and you are not using an additional safety measure to potentially protect yourself. Like, what am I gonna get up in arms over that for, right? Like, and in fairness to him, like, there isn't enough data out there to know if, like, while it might protect you in some instances, does it raise risk another by adding more weight to the helmet, right? Because it was, like he's gotten concussions from like the whiplash. So like I can understand why there might be pushback on it, but yeah, it's just like we've talked about this too many times, and
Yeah.
there's only so many times someone can have a conversation before everyone's just like, all right, whatever.
Yeah, and that's exactly my point. Is I think we've all just reached the whatever phase. Like, and I know it's specifically with Tua, but also, Drake May
Hmm.
left the game with a concussion, left a win over the Jets with a concussion. Suck it, New York. And nobody really cares about how he's doing. The Patriot fans were just like, okay, but like, is he playing against Tennessee next week? Like, what? And I'm like, dude, just let Jacoby play next week, man. Protect the kid. God damn, we got a concussion. I feel like people don't care, and I feel like what happens is someone gets a concussion and everybody just gets pissed because they lost their fantasy matchup because they're like, oh, this guy got a concussion. What an idiot. How did he not play with his concussion? And that just as a, not like you and me, but I just mean like as a general NFL fans and the league and people who talk about it, we're just like, we don't care anymore. It's like, okay, whatever. It's just like any other injury. It's like, oh, he sprained his shoulder. He has a potentially life altering concussion. Whatever. Is he going to play next week or what? I need to set my fantasy lineup.
Josh played with his concussion.
That went well. 9 of 30. Seems like quarterback is the only position you can't play with a concussion. That's the real problem. Is like, also, can I tell you, I'm getting dangerously close to best ball territory here. I realize that, but my invention is if you have a player on your fantasy team who plays in the game but like leaves because they got hurt during the game, you should be allowed to switch that guy out for someone who hasn't played yet. And I know I'm like fading into best ball territory here, and I hate best ball because I equate it to like the everybody gets a trophy version of fantasy football. Because I think it's just like people who got so pissed about not setting their lineups correctly that they're like, oh, fuck it. I don't ever want to have to set my lineup again.
No, you just all about all the fucking moves. There are
Yeah.
no roster moves in best ball.
Ugh. Ugh. Yeah. I hate it. I add people just to add people.
Yes, I
I
know.
no, you know what's like really killing me this season in fantasy football?
What?
My team. This is the best fantasy football team I think I've ever had. Right. And I'm gonna say this. The last time that I talked about my fantasy football team being 3-0 on this podcast, I instantly lost two matchups in a row. So I'm going to say this, and then it's going to fall apart in horrific fashion in the next couple of weeks. But this is the best fantasy football team I've ever had. I think it's 6-2 and has scored by far the most points in the league. I'm averaging like
Mhm.
over 125 points per game this season. But my problem is that the team is so good and so deep that I don't have anybody that I can get rid of to pick up people. And I have to make like a tough cut soon because I have Jonathan Brooks on IR and he's practicing now. And I'm like, oh God, like who am I going to cut? Because I have 6 startable running backs on my team and 4 startable receivers. Plus, I have Lamar Jackson, who's QB1, and I have the best kicker. And I'm like, I'm looking at my team. I'm like, okay, I have Bijan Robinson, James Cook, Brian Robinson Jr., Kareem Hunt, who will probably be cuttable eventually,
Yeah.
Nick Chubb, Jonathan Brooks, and there's someone else I'm forgetting. And my wide receivers are like Terry McLaurin, Marvin Harrison Jr., Khalil Shakir, um, and someone else I'm forgetting. I'm not looking at my fantasy team right now, but I have like so many guys I could play that my biggest problem is I basically like can't make any moves. I'm hamstrung by how good the roster is. But now that I talked about that on the podcast, I'm sure that won't last, and I'll
Yeah.
be desperately picking up a third string quarterback soon. So, oh, I have Darnell Mooney and Tyrone Tracy Jr., who
Mm.
just put up, those two just put up 22 points and 16.6 points on my bench this week. And I still scored 147. So, yeah. If this team doesn't win the championship, it really might be it for me. All right. I know how much everybody loves to hear about other people's specific fantasy teams, especially people who are like
It's their favorite.
they're like 1-7 right now and half their teams on IR. And they're just like, God, fuck you, Adam. America's most favorite segment, Bolds and Scolds for week 8 of the NFL season. I believe it is your week to go first with your bold.
Jameis is back, baby.
Mm.
Eating W's. Good to see someone go out and just show how bad Deshaun Watson was. He lit up the Ravens, and we all know full and well that Deshaun would not have broken 150 yards passing.
It reminded me of earlier this season when Bryce Young got benched in favor of Andy Dalton, and then Andy Dalton came in and was awesome. And it's like,
Yeah.
God, just when you thought Bryce Young's value couldn't get any lower, it's like just when you thought Deshaun Watson's season couldn't get any worse, like literally the very next guy comes in and throws for 336 yards or whatever I said it was.
Yeah.
And he's just awesome and has like the best game of any Browns quarterback in however many years. And it's like, yeah, just when you thought like they couldn't make Deshaun Watson look any worse, here comes Jameis Winston to make him look worse. But I just enjoyed it because it was the full Jameis experience on
Hmm.
Sunday. Like he threw
Oh
the
yeah.
game losing interception and Kyle Hamilton dropped it.
Yeah.
And then he comes back the very next play or like 2 plays later and throws a bomb for the game winning touchdown. And you're like, that's the thing we love about Jameis, man, is like he's the most exciting quarterback in the league because he drops back and you never know what's going to happen. But I mean, he was good. He was good on Sunday.
Yeah. He legitimately played really good football.
Yeah. My bold is tight ends. So Sunday was National Tight End Day, which is a holiday that would probably be way better if it wasn't about football. But the tight ends actually showed out for National Tight End Day. I went back and did an average of the top 10 fantasy tight ends for every week this season because we talked earlier on the podcast, like earlier this year, we talked about the disappearance of tight ends and how, in fantasy at least, this was supposed to be a super deep year for tight ends who were going to be awesome. And they basically were doing nothing to start the season. And like all of the big name guys that were drafted high, like Kelsey and Mandrews and Kittle and all these guys, like weren't doing anything. And it was like, oh God, they this cover two system that everybody's running is basically taking tight ends completely out of the game. So average scores for the top 10 fantasy tight ends by week. Week one was 9.6 points, and then 11.5 points, 11.7 points, 11.2 points. Week five, we go up to 14.3 points. Week six, 13.6. Week seven, 14.4. And week eight, 17.9 points was the average score for the top 10 tight ends. So it's basically been like a little bumpy, but the line has gone straight up this season. They're getting better and better every week as offensive coordinators are now kind of like rediscovering how do we get tight ends more involved versus these cover two systems. And you know that like when Kyle Pitts has a massive fantasy day, that it's going to be a good day for tight ends because he had like 94 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah.
Can we even call Kyle Pitts a tight end?
No, I mean, he's listed as one, but yeah, the like some of the tight ends on the list, their situations have gotten better. Like
Yeah.
Cade Otton was the number one
Mhm.
score. He actually had the number one tight end performance of the season so far on Sunday. In the Buccaneers loss to the Falcons because like there's no Mike Evans and no Chris Godwin. So it's like, oh God, who do we go to? Uh Mark Andrews has gotten better every week and has now caught a touchdown, I think, in 3 straight games. Um, so like, yeah, imagine that the Ravens start getting him more involved in the offense and he starts getting more healthy after that like high wire fracture, tight wire fracture, whatever it was called he had this season. And Tucker Kraft, the tight end for Green Bay, is actually the number one scoring tight end on the season now. So yeah, it's been a year for tight ends, but they're getting more involved and getting better and better every week. So, who is your scold for week 8?
The Colts in general as an organization. So I don't think anyone here is gonna sit by and say Anthony Richardson didn't deserve to be benched based on his performance this year. That, like I said, I would have benched him at least a week earlier. Then, like you kind of look at the way he played this year versus the way he looked as a passer last year, like it, the regression, like it just doesn't look as comfortable. We talked about him not being used in ways that, like fully utilizes his greatest strengths. That's not a great look. Uh, then he, you know, says that, he wasn't given an explanation as to why he was benched. Sure, we can sit there and like say like, come on, man, like why, but the reality is that when you're drafted fifth overall and you're started day one, like yeah, I think at least some sort of conversation is owed when that decision is made. Uh, I mean, I think like in general, anytime anyone is being benched, like there should be a legitimate conversation. And then Michael Pittman Jr. says that he found out about the benching from social media. It would be now, I will say that the conversation should always happen with the quarterback before it is announced to the team. There should be no, no chance that the media is announcing that to the nation before you have a chance to talk to your players about that. And I think it's really easy for people to sit here and look at the completion percentage and kind of crack jokes and forget about the fact that this team is also still owned by Jim Irsay, who is a colossal piece of shit and sure likes to meddle. And I know that all the public statements are saying that there's been no meddling by him. This was entirely Shane Steichen's decision. And you know what? That might have been a decision that he arrived to by himself. But it's real hard to look at this situation and not smell Jim Irsay's stink. Like it it all just reeks of bad culture. Honestly, that you're gonna continue to have problems regardless of what young quarterback you have, as long as that's the case.
Yeah, my question for the Colts right now is what is your goal this season?
Hmm.
Like if it's to make the playoffs as a wild card and lose in the first round, then yes, I think going to Joe Flacco is the right move.
Hmm.
And I appreciate Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco was my bold a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Because I do think he's underrated, but you're not going further than maybe being a wild card team. And I don't know, maybe you give somebody a hard time in the first round. But looking at who the division winners are going to be right now, I really doubt that. So, like Flacco might get you close to a playoff berth or maybe a playoff berth and a first round exit, but you're now again taking reps away from the guy that you spent a top 5 pick on,
Yep.
who obviously needs them. So that part doesn't make
Hmm.
sense. And I also like wanted to push back on this whole there's been a lot of buzz this week about how the NFL doesn't develop quarterbacks anymore. And I saw this tweet that was like, "Oh, now you have uh Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Mac Jones." I'm missing somebody from that draft. Not Lawrence, but
Wilson.
yeah, Zach Wilson,
Yeah.
Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young. Like they named all these guys that have been drafted the last couple of years in the top or like in the first round who are now benched. And they're like, the NFL just doesn't develop quarterbacks anymore. They're just not interested in it. You got to come in and be good right away or blah, blah, blah. And we just like completely ignore Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, like
Yep.
guys who have been very clearly developed by good coaching the last
Hmm.
couple of years after being in the league for a long time and are now having like renaissance
Yep.
because they want to push this narrative. And I'm like, okay, maybe those guys are just bad. And we're just cutting bait sooner than
Yeah.
ever. Like, yeah, obviously, like cutting bait on Mac Jones and Trey Lance was the right thing to do, obviously. So, but I also don't think that like just because Anthony Richardson is getting benched means that they're like we're done developing him. He might just need to be punished for the way he acted on Sunday and like learn a
Yeah.
lesson from this and like work his way back onto the field.
Yeah.
But I kind of see that both ways where it's like, yeah, like you're taking the reps away from him that he probably needs, but also like maybe he needs a wake up call. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you as the quarterback cannot tap out and then later in a hurry up situation, like try to be the leader of men for your offensive line that are gassed, running downfield and telling them what you need from them.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can't do that. So like that yes, like there are definitely consequences for the way he has acted. And quite frankly, like those consequences are going to have to come for the players. And not that's never gonna like that coming from the coaches is never going to have as much of an impact as it is going to be coming from his teammates.
Yeah. Yeah. I just don't agree with this whole notion that the NFL doesn't develop quarterbacks anymore, especially because,
Yep.
like, okay, there's also Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson who are both
Yep.
developed in the NFL. Like, there's
Hmm.
a lot of guys. So just because we've had a bunch of bust in the last
Yeah.
couple of years, and I'm not saying Anthony Richardson is or isn't at this point, but just because there's been a lot of bust and a
Yeah.
lot of potential bust does not mean that the NFL is not interested in developing quarterbacks. It's
I
just like
mean,
maybe we're getting better at identifying if a guy has it or not.
I think there's still two camps on like how far this guy has come, but Jordan Love, are we not gonna
Yep.
sit here and say that guy developed? Because like there's a lot of people who watched him throw coming out in that draft who are like, yeah, no, that's not it.
Luckily for me, I wasn't one of them. Are we going to sit here and say that Jared Goff hasn't developed since he joined the
Yeah,
Lions? Like there, there's so many examples of guys who have developed at
yeah,
different points in their career, and it's like
yep.
just
And
because you're benching a guy for a little bit doesn't mean that we're done developing him.
yeah, and I think what the true answer behind that sentiment isn't that guys aren't being developed in the NFL. It is hugely dependent on the situation that you land in because there are places that will develop you and there are places that will not because either they don't want to and they don't have the patience and you need to win now, or two, like
They
they
can't.
straight up don't know how to teach.
Yeah.
And like there's so much nepotism in the NFL. So like yeah, like that it's I think it's going to take a long time for that to decrease. I don't think it'll ever entirely go away, but I think we are slowly seeing more and more teams taking notice of, oh, that worked. Maybe we take a page out of that book.
I'm
Yeah.
not going to spend a lot of time on my school, but we probably couldn't talk about week 8 without talking about the fact that the Bears lost on a Hail Mary pass.
Yeah.
So my school is the Bears Hail Mary defense, but really like Hail Mary defenses in general. So I think everybody knows by now that Jaden Daniels threw a pass that I think is going to make him rookie of the year. A Hail Mary that was caught by Noah Brown to beat the Bears on Sunday.
Yeah.
You probably also saw the video of Bears safety Tariq Stevenson mocking the fans with his back to the play until
Hmm.
the play was already going on, and then he runs in late and ironically becomes the one that tips the ball back to Noah Brown for the touchdown. But like, I have a question, and maybe this is just me being naive, but how hard is it to defend a Hail Mary? I like, I feel like for years and years, it's been like, okay, let's just have everybody go down there and we're all just going to jump into a giant pile and see what happens. And that, like, the worst case scenario is basically what happened to the Bears on Sunday, where it gets tipped towards the end zone and there's a dude just wide open, not like literally the one dude who didn't jump into the pile is standing there by himself. And he's like, ooh, free touchdown. And he barely even celebrated because like, I really didn't do anything. I just caught the tip pass. But you would like, if I was establishing a Hail Mary defense, I would like bracket that giant fucking blob that everybody jumps into. And I would have like one or two guys behind it and one or two guys in front of it.
Yeah.
Because like it's very, very seldom that all those people jump up and an offensive player just catches it and comes down with it and it's a touchdown.
Yeah.
Like if an offensive player would have just caught it and come down with it on Sunday, it wouldn't have been a touchdown. And all you got to do is touch him down and the game's over.
Yeah.
Like literally the only thing that can beat you there is if it gets tipped into the end zone and you have nobody there to do anything about that.
Hmm.
So I don't know, man.
Well, and on top of this, like the Matty Perfus should be berated for the plan that he put out. Like, yes, Tyreek Stevenson should be sat down for a couple weeks because of that. That's inexcusable. Um, However, like you're supposed to be the defensive mastermind, and you are clearly behind on like how do we handle these situations? Because that same week, the Texans showed you exactly how you handle that situation. They overloaded the right side of the Colts offensive line to force Anthony Richardson to run to his left so that he wouldn't be able to sit there and like in a comfortable throwing stance so that he would have to flip his hips back to be able to throw, and he wasn't able to get the ball off, not cleanly, right? And what did Chicago do? Oh yeah, let's just line up three guys like right in the middle of the line that aren't going to be able to get any rush at all. And they really killed themselves on the play before when they gave them that easy, like, what, 12, 13-yard out route that gave Jaden Daniels the chance to throw that ball. And, like, that's a known strategy in those situations. Like, you have to get within a certain range. And for the defense to just not even be within 10 yards of that at the snap, yeah, that like you literally gave them everything they wanted in that situation.
The only thing a prevent defense does is prevents you from winning.
Yep.
So yeah, I just like I don't know, man. I don't feel like it's that hard, but apparently it is. All right. Gambling picks for week 9 of the NFL season. So we got to talk about week 8 real quick because it was by far our worst week of the year. We did not hit a single bet. And really, the problem was we kind of went all in on the Packers beating the Jags by various amounts.
Yeah.
And the Packers did win, but did not cover. And my mom got a very new experience of how to watch a football game with me on Sunday because the game's tied and Malik Willis throws that bomb to Jaden Reed. And I had Jaden Reed like scoring a touchdown and over a certain amount of yards, like tied to some other stuff. Plus, we had all of the Packers bets. And she's like, "Oh, are you not excited? The Packers are going to win." And I was like, "No, he needed to score the touchdown for them to cover for us to win the bets. So even though the Packers won, we win nothing." And my mom was like, "Wow,
Yeah.
this is a really different way to watch football." And I was like, "It's a really miserable way to watch football, and nobody should bet on it." Because besides the podcast going 0 for 5, I also had I had my worst gambling week, like maybe ever. I think I was like 2-7 or something like that. It was bad. It was bad. So now we went from being up $94, $95 for the year to being down $5, all in the course of 1 week on podcast.
God, that's
So
brutal.
I know that's tough. Uh, my wife just also overheard about how bad of a gambling week I had this week. I'm up for the year, people. And all we really need is for the Browns to make the playoffs and the Lions to win the Super Bowl, and we'll have had the best gambling year ever.
Ah,
Anyway, we're back. Well, we're back at it. We're gonna go positive this week, Matt. We're gonna make smart bets that smart people make. We're not gonna put all of our eggs in one basket ever again because it's very high risk, very high reward, right? Because like when we did it with the Lions, we killed it, but now the
yeah.
Packers screwed
We're
us.
going
So.
to do it with Lions.
Yep. All right. Back to basics. Thursday night football is the Texans at the Jets. The Jets of New York somehow favored by 1.5 points. The Jets of New York, who scored 20 points, committed 0 turnovers, and held their opponent to under 250 yards of offense, and still lost. From 1940 until Sunday, teams that did those 3 things were 756-0. The Jets lost to the Patriots by 3. That Jets team is favored on Thursday. I'll put that out there. Seems like a trap. Seems like a very obvious trap. It seems like they want us to bet the Texans. And if you want to bet the Texans, I will leave that up to you because I'm getting back to basics here. I'm getting back to what we know works, and that is kickers to hit field goals on Thursday nights, baby. Texans kicker Kai Fairbairn over 1.5 field goals. It's minus 150. He has attempted 3 field goals in each of his last 4 games. He's 19 for 21 on the season, hitting 90.5% of his field goals. We're going back to the well. We have to win. Kai Fairbairn's taking me there. What is your Thursday night football bet?
I'm going to go back to basics for me as well, and that is not believing in Aaron Rodgers. So I am going to take an alternate line with the Texans at minus 1.5 for plus 112.
Yeah, I knew that you were going to have some kind of Texans winning thing, whether it was alternate line or money line or whatever it is. But man, I don't get that. And the thing that makes me very nervous about it is, yeah, I guess it's not that bad, but right now 77% of the money is on the Texans.
Mm-hmm.
And it just makes me nervous because they're not going to have Nico Collins or Stefon Diggs on Thursday. But the Jets just lost to the Patriots and they're 2-6.
Exactly.
Like I don't. God, this team's so bad.
I mean, like what it comes down to it for me is like, okay, one of these teams has a quarterback that can make plays and the other does not.
That's very fair. And the Texans defense is actually really good. They're number 2 in DVOA this season. So, all right, weekend picks. I had 2 that I really liked. So I'm going to tell you what I went with. And if you have the same pick, I can. Well, I guess you tell me where you want to go and I'll just pick the one that you don't pick because I feel like we're going to look at the same 2.
I know it was a rough week for us, but I think away favorites are probably still a thing.
Well, so this was really my problem in real life is that away favorites were 2-5 last week against the spread.
Yeah.
So I'm not ready to jump off that bandwagon yet. And the 2 away favorites I really like this weekend are Rams -2 at the Seahawks. After how the Rams looked last week, getting Kupp and Nakua back and how inconsistent the Seahawks have been. And the Motor City Kitties -3.5 at Lambeau. Either a injured Jordan Love who has not practiced all week or Malik Willis is going to be the quarterback for the Packers. And you can get that at -3.5 right now.
I think I'm gonna take the Detroit line. I try to avoid doing that because I mean I don't want to get hurt in my fandom and in my wallet.
Yeah, so that line right now is Lions -3.5, and it's -105. I will take the Rams are down to -1.5 right now, and that is -110. So I'm going to take Rams at Seahawks. Long shot bet of the week. We're going to go with James Cook to score 2 or more touchdowns against the Miami Dolphins. Earlier this year, James Cook scored 3 touchdowns on the Dolphins on 12 touches. Let James cook, baby. That's plus 340 right now. So we have Kai Fairbairn, Texans kicker, to hit over 1.5 field goals. The Texans -1.5 at the Jets, which is an alternate line. The Rams -1.5 at the Seahawks, the Lions -3.5 at the Packers, and then James Cook to score twice against Miami. Matt, we need a 5-0 week.
We do.
After last week, we have to redeem ourselves. And I feel good about this slate that we've put out in front of us. 3 away favorites. Well, I guess the Texans aren't an away favorite, but we're making them one. So multiple away favorites. Yeah. I'm still not ready to jump off that bandwagon just because it had a bad week. I think that's like the wonky week that like, it's like, oh man, let's ride the away favorites. And then they screw you. And you're like, I'm never betting an away favorite again. And then they start taking over again.
Yeah.
1 week does not buck a season-long trend.
No.
So, but that is it for us. As always, Foul Doc can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Overcast, anywhere you get your podcast. You can hit us up on Gmail, fouledoutsports@gmail.com, and you can find our videos on TikTok at Fouled Out Sports Podcast. It's a long name, but you can't miss it. College football this weekend, noon on Saturday. Number 3 Penn State versus number 4 Ohio State. And I don't know what's a funnier outcome, proving that Penn State's a fraud or Ohio State losing a second game in 3 weeks. Besides that, really, the only other big game is Pittsburgh versus SMU, is 18 versus 22 undefeated ACC, or 2 teams that are undefeated in the ACC going at it. Right now we have all 4 sports going. So the goddamn Yankees are up 5-0 now. Not happy about this. They've played 4 innings and it's 5-0. And the pit in my stomach is getting hittier as time goes on.
They're just going to score all their runs in this one game.
Let's hope so. They scored 11 yesterday. I'm just going to turn off sports and go watch that new documentary on Netflix about the 2004 Red Sox coming back from being down 3-0 against said Yankees. Go enjoy that. But all right, my friend, I will see you soon.
Yep. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Bye,
Robin.